everyone. Hey, hey, hey. Let's talk everyday equity at the Justice Table. From add-on to all-in. Equity that inspires change. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Anika Farrell, and I am the founder and CEO of ULIN Consulting. I am so excited to have you here with me today. It feels like such an honor to be able to have you join me as we talk about our topic today. And so, for you, I want you to think about this. Organizational DNA. That's going to be our topic for today. What does that look like for you? Organizational DNA. In organizations, we don't think about how our DNA is embedded within the fabric of our organizations because we go to work, we go to our schools, our workplaces, wherever we are, and we leave. But today, I want us to think about equity not being an add-on. It's embedded into the fabric of our organizational DNA. And I want you as listeners to be able to leave with an understanding of why equity work must move from an initiative to foundation. And I want you as listeners to have an understanding and have insight on some concrete steps that organizations can take in order to move from just an add-on to an all-in type of organization. Well, let's think about this. How do we move from add-on to all-in? How do we move from having organizations just have equity as an add-on in order to be truly embedded into the fabric of our organization, to make it part of that DNA? Well, today we're going to think about this. I want you to think about listening really intently on how equity has been treated as a temporary initiative. I've seen it in organizations. I've seen organizations say that equity is important, but they cut the programs and the funding and the individuals who oversee those programs that support the work. I've seen them cut cost. And of course, when you start cutting costs and you start cutting people, individuals who are left in those organizations burn out. Individuals who are supporting those programs, who create some of the sustainable work in those programs, they get really tired. They leave. And guess what? That burnout and those programs being dissolved are not part of what creates the foundational work that organizations need in order to make equity part of their natural work. Not an add-on, but part of their natural work. I've seen organizations shift that work, though, and make it part of developing equity routines that demonstrate the way that they're going to make their commitment to embedding their work into equity within those organizations. It has lasting results. And so we have to think about some of the key components of those equity routines. What does an equity routine being embedded into your work look like? It looks like inclusive decision making. It looks like creating routines in which diverse perspectives and decisions can be made. It looks like collecting and analyzing data on hiring practices, pay, promotions, retention, and engagement, and disaggregating that by race, gender, and disability, and identifying what those disparities truly look like, having conversations around that, and then doing something about it. Those equity routines look like equity audits, where you're conducting regular reviews of policies and programs and the culture through an equity lens. It means that we are centering equity in our conversations, scheduling structured discussions with staff and meetings at retreats that reflect on inclusion and bias and belonging, and what psychological safety truly looks like in the organization. And then, of course, those equity routines look like accountability mechanisms. setting equity goals, tracking the progress, and sharing results transparently. And then, of course, we can't stop with just the one and done. We have to think about continuous learning and routine trainings and reflecting on diversity, equity, and inclusion and access. Those things are important for the overall organization. We have to realize that the purpose of equity routines moves equity from a one time initiative to everyday practice where we're embedding fairness and inclusion into the culture and to the operations. We're building organizational accountability and transparency, and we're creating sustainable, measurable progress towards equity goals. We are overall thinking about moving equity work from initiative to foundation. Let's be honest. For too long, equity has been treated as a one time bound initiative, a project that can be started, measured, and completed. But true equity is not a program. It is a principle of operation and a way the organization exists for all of the employees, its staff, its students, and the community it serves. We have seen in the past, and most recently in the present, when organizations frame equity as an initiative, it remains vulnerable to budget cuts, leadership changes, and shifting priorities. But when equity becomes the foundation, it transforms how decisions are made, who holds power, and how success is defined across every level of the organization. Equity must move from being an episodic to an embedded way of life for an organization. Not something that we visit occasionally through trainings or special events, but something that we live daily in our hiring practices and the resource allocation and our leadership work. It's a shared responsibility that is woven into the culture, the systems, and the structures. That is what equity looks like when it's embedded into the organization. I want you to think about this. What are some concrete steps to move from initiative to foundation, to embedding equity into our organizational structures and cultures? I have some ideas. We have to first reframe equity as a core value, not a goal. We have to think about embedding equity into the organization's mission, vision, and strategic plan. It should inform every single decision and be the guiding light of everything an organization does, from the budget priorities to the performance reviews and the hiring. It has to be part of all of it. Number two, it has to be part of the building accountability systems. We have to be able to establish measurable equity outcomes and tie them to the leadership performance metrics. We have to be able to regularly review data on hiring, promotions, and service outcomes through an equity lens and assess it based on equity frameworks. Three, we have to be able to assign structures and policies. We have to be able to audit our policies within organizations. We have to be able to evaluate our procedures and systems to identify where inequities persist. We have to be able to redesign them to promote access and fairness and transparency for all, not just for some. Number four, we must think about investing in continuous learning. Let's move beyond one time trainings to sustained learning opportunities that build cultural fluency, anti bias skills, structural awareness among all staff that supports the way it's supposed to be supported for everyone. And also, most importantly, how it supports our disproportionately impacted groups. Number five, we have to think about centering our total groups, centering the individuals that are marginalized in being able to share their voices in decision making. We have to be able to engage those most impacted by the inequities in shaping our solutions. There must be advisory councils, there must be participatory decision making groups, and we must co design what that looks like. And most importantly, implementing those decisions is essential to the actual solutions. We can't just invite their voices in. They're already disproportionately impacted, and then not use what we're learning from those voices to implement within the fabric of the organization. So let's not just listen without action. We have to implement. We have to be able to normalize conversations about power and privilege. That's number 6. Let's create safe, or as safe as possible, environments for individuals to feel comfortable about having these conversations. We have to provide supportive spaces to talk openly and as bravely as possible, because we know not everyone feels safe and brave enough to speak up, but we must provide those outlets where individuals can have conversations about systemic barriers in organizational culture. We must be able to have dialogue that builds understanding, and understanding drives change. Number 7, we must model equity from the top. Leadership must demonstrate visible commitment to modeling inclusive behaviors, championing difficult changes, and allocating resources to sustain the work. You can't just say the work is important, but then let it go, and then not use our resources and allocate funds that support the work. It doesn't look important if you don't do that. So leaders can't say that they believe in true equity when the equity program, staffing, and work are the first to be eliminated. That doesn't show the importance. I want you to know that having some of those steps that I just provided, those 7 basic steps, we produce outcomes. Because when equity becomes foundational, organizations don't have to add it to their agenda. It is the agenda. The results are workplace and communities where all people, especially those from historically marginalized communities, can thrive and contribute and lead. We must be able to take something away from these conversations. We must not only just give you some tools and some thoughts and some strategies. And guess what? We gave you some concrete ones today. But we ask that you take these away and take these back into your organizations. Have conversations with your group members about what it means to truly embed equity into the fabric of your organization. Here, we're at the justice table. We're having real conversations about real things that affect real communities in real organizations. And it's not just staff members, it's students, it's community members, it's families. Everyone's being impacted when we don't truly embed equity into the work and the fabric that we are supposed to support. So I want you to think about taking this away. Think about your organization where equity is either treated as an add-on and not as an add-in. And then think about one policy, one meeting, or one routine you could reframe this week to center equity as part of that. You can then think about being able to thrive and move from equity being considered as an add-on to an all-inclusive part of your organization. Equity is not an initiative. It is absolutely the foundation. And so I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I want to thank you for the opportunity to have you at our justice table. And I hope to have you back here soon. Stay tuned in for additional episodes coming your way. We got some great speakers that are going to be joining us in these future episodes. But we wanted to ground you in this work. We wanted to give you some information that would help guide your thoughts, that would help lead you through a path of understanding how equity can be part of the actual foundation. It can be part of the center of what you do. And it goes from being an add-on to all in, and everybody wins as part of that. So again, we want you to continue joining us each week. We will be dropping a new episode. We will be having guest speakers who will be joining us. And I'm excited, and I hope you are too. If you have any thoughts about this episode, please put them in our comments. We want to know. We want to know what you thought. We want to know what you're thinking. We want to know what we can bring to you that will help create equity being a part of your fabric of your organization. We're going to take it from an add-on to an all-in. So like us, come back and join us, subscribe to our channel, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to joining you next week. Let's talk everyday equity at the Justice Table, from add-on to all-in. Equity that inspires change.